Welcome to the next part of numeric constants in C programming language. So, in our last part we seen what are the integer constants. So, integer constants are basically sequence of digits. There are three types of integer constant. The first is decimal integer constant, where you can have any sequence of digits from 0 to 9. Second is octal integer constant, where you can have sequence of digits from 0 to 7, but first digit must be 0. And third is hexadecimal constant, where you can have any sequence of digits from 0 to 9 and later from 1 to f, but leading 0 x. Now, let us move towards next part of constant, that is float constant. This is also known as real constant or real number. So, any sequence of digit with at least one decimal point can be treated as a real number or real constant, and you can say it is a float constant. So, it must consist of at least one decimal point. This number can be negative or positive. By default it is treated as positive. These are some valid examples. 0.3, this is valid. 16.143 is valid. 0.041, now 0 is not written, but decimal point is there. So, 0.041, this is also a valid example of float constant. Now, how much digit you can have in a number, based on that there are two types of float point constant. The first is known as float constant and second is known as double constant. If up to 6 digit precision you are writing a number, you have a number, then that number can be stored as float constant. If you have 10 digit precision, then it is known as double. So, double is a float point constant which allows you to take a real number up to 10 digit precision, that is 10 digits after decimal point, while float is a real number, a real constant which allows you to take a real number with 6 digit precision, that is 6 digits after decimal point. Now, you can define large or very small number as a float number, but for that new advanced technique is used, that is known as exponential or power. So, very long or very short number can be write as a float constant. So, the syntax is mantissa, e and exponent. Mantissa is mantissa and exponent part are separated by letter e. This is very important, and what this e represent? This represents power of 10. Now, here you can see what is mantissa. It is real or integer, positive or negative, but must have at least one digit. This is very important. And what is exponent? Exponent is only integer number, either positive or negative. By default it is treated as positive, but you can purposefully add a sign that is negative. Now, letter e is separating mantissa and exponent part, and it can be in lowercase or uppercase. For example, if I have 10,000, so this 10,000 can be written as 1 into 10 raised to power 4. So, in C programming language you can write this as 1.0 E4. So, 1.0 E4 means 1 into 10 raised to power 4, and that simply means 10,000. So, this is the exponential number. Now, rules to construct real constant. Number that may have fractional part can be treated as a real constant or float constant. It can be negative or positive. No embedded blanks, comma, non-numerical characters are allowed in a real constant. A real number may also express in a exponential notation. An exponent is an integer number with optional plus or minus sign, while mantissa can be real or integer. The exponential is used to represent the number which is very large or very small. Now, these are some valid examples. 0.0023 plus 15.304, this is also valid because sign is optional. Then minus 0.164 is also valid, 115.0 is also valid, 0.366 is also valid, then 0.12 E7 is also valid. What it mean? This means 0.12 into 10 raised to power 7. So, this is equivalent form of this. Then and so on. You can have the mantissa negative and exponent as negative. But remember, the exponent part must be a integer number. The next is character constant. Character constant means any single character or sequence of character you can take as an input, or you can have that particular sequence as a constant. You can have such a message in your programming code. For that, you need to define what are the character constant. Now, single character constant is any single character in single quotation mark, any single character in single quotation mark is known as single character constant. So, it can be a letter, it can be a symbol, it can be a digit, it can be a white space. For example, see here, capital Q in single quote mark is a valid example of single character constant, small q in a single quote mark is also a valid example, and so on. So, any character, even blank space is a valid example of single character constant. Then string constant. String constant means sequence or combination of characters enclosed in a double quote mark. This is very important. So, any sequence of character, it can be a letter, it can be a symbol, it can be a special character, it can be a white space, anything, but must be enclosed in a single quote mark. Now, remember, here you can have a single character as a string also, but it must be enclosed in a double quote mark. For example, see here. So, small q in single quote mark is treated as single character constant, while small q in double quote mark is treated as string constant. So, these are some valid examples. Then next is backslash character constant. So, the backslash with some character in lower case have some predefined meaning, and such a constant known as backslash character constant. For example, backslash n, this is used to transfer the control to new line, backslash t, this is used to transfer the control to the horizontal tab, backslash v is used to transfer to take a vertical tab, backslash b is used to give beep, that is a small monotonous sound during execution of program. So, these are some backslash character that you can use. Now, this is a table where you can use various backslash characters. So, this is all about the float constant, that is real constants, and then backslash character constant. Now, let us move towards the next part, that is symbolic constant. Now, there are some predefined symbols or predefined values, those are assigned with some physical quantity, and that should remain constant if you are executing program to solve problems in physics or chemistry or any other science subject. For example, velocity of sound, it is 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second, value of pi in mathematics, it is 3.14. So, for that purpose, C programming code has a provision, and such a value you can define as a symbolic constant. Now, so universal constant or unique constant whose value user want to be remain constant forever. Forever means during execution of the whole program, then you can define such a values as a symbolic constant. So, it can be a number, it can be an integer number, it can be a real number, or it can be a constant. Now, what is syntax for that? To define such a symbolic constant, you have to write some statement, and that syntax for the statement is number sign followed by keyword define, then blank space, then symbolic name and value. So, number sign define is a keyword which is in lowercase, then blank space, symbolic name is any valid variable name. Any valid variable name means all rules of identifier applicable to this. Then again blank space and then value. Remember, there should not be any full stop or any semicolon or comma colon after this particular value, that is not allowed. Now, you can see the examples. Number sign define pi 3.14. What it mean? It means the value 3.14 is assigned to the variable pi, and what is pi? Pi is treated as a universal constant or symbolic constant. Now, after execution of this particular statement, what compiler will understood? What compiler will understood? It understands that the pi is a symbolic constant and having value 3.14. Similarly, number sign define C 3.0 e plus it. What it mean? It means c is a symbolic constant having value 3.0 e plus it, that is 3 into 10 to the power 8. So, this is about symbolic constant. Now, what are the rules to construct symbolic constant statement? The symbolic name must be a valid identifier, and for general purpose that is not actually the situation, means you can write in lower case, but to separate them from general variable you can, the practice is you can write them in a uppercase. Now, the first character of this particular line must be a number, then second is the keyword define must be in lower case, this is very important. Then no blank space is allowed between number sign and define. The next is there must be a blank space between define, number sign define and the symbolic name. There must be blank space between symbolic name and value, and no keywords are allowed to be used as a symbolic name. So, these are the rules to construct the symbolic constant. Then no keywords are allowed to be used as symbolic name must be identifier. The change in symbolic constant value after defining C program is not acceptable. Then symbolic name cannot be declared for any data type within the main body of program, and the statement must not end with semicolon or any other value. So, this is all about the constants in C programming language. Thank you.